Hi guys, it's John. In this video, I want to run through a content strategy which actually converts into clients. So I want your inquiry form filled up with inquiries. I don't really care your account, if it grows or not, if you're trying to get more followers. I want people paying you more money for your services, and that is our priority. I think there's so much confusion and there's so much temptation to get Instagram growth courses and for you to grow your following and thinking that getting more followers will solve all your problems, because without that sort of content you can't miss. But you can have millions of followers, but if they're not the right people, if they're people who aren't committal, you won't get people coming through to pay for your services. So this isn't an Instagram growth strategy. This exact strategy here has helped over 400 fitness coaches earn a collective $4 million worth of revenue over the last 3 years. So this is real world experience and everything that I've implemented firsthand when I'm working one-on-one with clients. It's all been distilled, and what you see in front of you is the product of all that work. And in this video, I want to cover what you're going to say, what sort of topics, now to kind of come up with the right topics to attract the right people, how to then go and create that content, when you're going to post that content, and then lastly, how you're going to systemize this so you can produce it more effortlessly and you can produce it with good fun and energy. And then ultimately that's going to be more magnetic, because when you're putting good stuff out there for the sake of it and you enjoy it, you just get more conversion off that sort of content when you're in that rhythm and flow state. So that's where we want to end up. And as far as I'm aware, when I was doing research to produce this video, I couldn't find any hard details or kind of how-to guides to how to identify your target market, what value actually means and what it looks like, and an overview which actually made sense of what value means, what a call to action is, and how that actually is going to work to drive people into that form. And that's what I want to cover today. So with that being said, the first thing I want to cover is what's the actual strategy here. And you'll find, you probably experience things like CTAs, call to action posts, you've probably experienced value posts, informative posts and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, your content should be split, or your strategy should be split into three different angles. The first angle is we should talk about problems that we know people want to solve. We should then show your framework of how you solve those problems, and then you should provide proof that works. And that's it, really. That is the simplest way I can put it, but that way actually generates interest and it generates urgency from the right people. Because if we talk about the problems your service is designed to solve, you attract people with the problems that you can solve, and you show the fact that you can solve them and you give evidence towards it, and you just repeat that in a loop over and over and over again, and it starts to convince people. They can like you, but if they know for sure that you're the person that understands them and can solve their issue, they will inquire if they have the need. So it's the biggest factor. Being likable is one thing, having that attractive character is one thing, being personable, being relatable is one thing, but people adamantly knowing that you have evidence that you understand them and solve their problems on repeat, because you have done others, that's the most important factor. So that's as complicated as it needs to be in terms of the different angles of content which we're going to go into. But a big caveat here is the actual problem itself. Now, this is technically niching down. I'm not going to go into that too much in this video, but niching down, a lot of people get way too complicated with this. I don't like niching down on demographics. People just like think a niche is over 30s who earn a lot of money. So if you're over 30, you earn a lot of money, you can pay me and you're going to pay a high ticket, you're my niche. It's like, not exactly. A niche is more, what problems do you solve and how do you solve them? It's the situational problems that someone if you're looking for fat loss, okay, sedentary workers, low active lifestyles start to create insulin resistance from overly sweet foods, from daily consumption of like common snacks. That can start to kind of form a barrier within the fat loss process of how their body handles calories, and then that can start to create issues and mood swings and things like that. So niching down on the situations and the problems they create are more important, but it doesn't matter if they're not painful. So I'll put this here, this is like a target, and you've got to pinpoint where is the pain in the market. Because if you're solving a problem that no one cares about, you're not going to get much traction. And a good example of this is like, people seeing their abs is not too much of a burning issue, but if you're helping people quit alcohol or quit like severe diabetes, that's more painful. So you don't have to niche completely down to those areas, but you just got to be aware of what are more the burning issues, what are the things that people are more urgent to solve, and centering content and the things you talk about around those to get more action and throughput. And an example I have is Luke, because his account went from 1.2 thousand to 32,000 in the space of 5 weeks. He also went from £2,000 per month to £10,000 in that month collected cash because of him understanding what problem to talk about. Now, his target market, his informative content, which he centered his problems around, or what he orientated around, was PEDs. Because he was working with people a little bit more advanced, they train regularly, typically blokes, men. Men, we don't really admit the fact that we need help with many things. We're stubborn. Don't need help with training. My training's really good. Is it? Why haven't you grown? My diet's on point. Is it? Why are you carrying so much? No, I'm really self-conscious. I'm bulking, it's fine. And then lastly, PEDs. So PEDs is the one thing they couldn't stand up and say they knew infinitely, because they're either considering taking them, they're either taking them, but they don't have the knowledge basis and they have to admit that. So when you talk about the usage or safer use guides, or just generally like what is it, how they work, the market wanted to know. They were desperate to know that information. So he was just talking about things that people wanted to know, and he got great attraction from that. It's just a really good example. Give people what they want and what they need. And again, never be unethical, but if you're just talking about what people need and they have no awareness of what that means, you're not going to get traction. So another one's toning. Like, if your target market, use the word toning, don't bash toning. Like, you might not agree with it because it doesn't exist, but if that's all they're aware of, talk about it. You're not selling to your colleagues, you're selling to people who don't have your knowledge base. They're not stupid, they just don't have the knowledge base. So be aware of what the problems that they want, that need solving in your market, and then just focus and talk around that. But that's pretty much it. Now, actually it's not, because we can go on to the problem path. So this is a little task that you can use to identify and niche down and find out what those problems are if you don't know it. So if you've got a client that you enjoy working with, that if you could just say, look, if I find 1,000 of these people overnight, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to work with this person over and over and over again, because I really love the journey they've gone through. That's the sort of person you want really for this. So what do they look like at day one? And then what do they look like at 2 years end outcome going through with the optimal solution? What is the end product? Where do you want to take them? And then everything in between that, from this person to turn into this person, what has to happen? What barriers, thought patterns, habits, shifts, what needs to happen to take them to this person? And that is a good bare bones for working out what problems to talk about in content. And another big focal point here. At day one, what are their questions? It's not what we think is important for them. It's what are they thinking about? It's about their thoughts, their awareness, their consciousness on what they want to focus on is important, not what we think is important. Again, what do they want? Not what we think they need. And I'll badger that point because it's the difference between you getting tractions and inquiries and you posting, getting crickets and getting nothing back. You have to be aware of what people are thinking about, what they're focusing on to grab their attention. It's literally that simple. So it's worth doing your homework here, because no matter what we do after it, it's pointless if we're not talking about the right things. So do that. If you get stuck with that, you can reach out to me, you can book in a call below. I can kind of go through that with you, or you can comment below and I can help you out where I can virtually. But just be sure that you're talking about things that you know people want solving. And then the framework element, just proof is obvious, it's your results. It's you documenting the journey. It's carousels, going through stories of what your clients are doing, little check-in updates. Framework though is literally, how does your service work, or how does your service solve that issue, and how do you approach that issue? And what is your method of doing that? How do you accommodate those problems, and how do you do this basically? So that's what you're gonna say. Cool. Okay, now we're gonna go on to, okay, how do you then put that into content? What do you actually do? So on here, I've got like this graph of intent, and basically this is intent / impact. Now, my point with this is, if someone sees a picture, it might hit them a little bit, might stop them, but there's probably not going to get too much information from that. If they see like a little short reel and then a quote on there, might cause a little bit more of reaction, might lodge a little bit more in the memory, but not much more. If they have a carousel with more information, that's going to do more. If they have a non-verbal reel, which is basically you not speaking, but you going about your day, adding text, having stuff happen, or visually showing information without you talking it, that's going to have more information. And then lastly, a talking reel where you're communicating directly to the audience, to the camera, saying what you mean, believe with tone and conviction. That's going to create more impact and intent. And you know, you start here and you drive up here, and that's ultimately going to probably produce more, this sort of content is going to produce probably more inquiries than this sort of content. Obviously, one exception being before and after transformations. But an example of that, you can have a picture of before and after transformation, but if you did a picture and you talked about it, that's going to drive more. Simple. So you'll find that the higher intent and the impact, the less views and engagement you're going to get. It's just categorically true. And this is where you've got to be careful. It's really hard. It's really hard to have that posting mentality where you just ignore the vanity metrics of likes and views. But I have found the inquiries, they do come from some of the worst performing content. And I mean that in terms of views. Andy's the best example of that. He averages around 6,000 views per reel. He produced one reel, 300 views. Awful. The thing with that reel though is it produced £12,000 worth of business for him, because he had 3 people come through off that reel and they paid up front, paid in full, each one. So that reel was absolutely terrible on paper. Should never do it again. Don't learn from it. Except it was probably one of the most highest grossing reels for his business that he's ever produced. Again, what are we actually thinking about here? Intent and impact is probably more important as a fitness coach than just views. We'll talk about where you're at, where your account's at, and how that relates to the ratios, because you have to take that into account, but I'll stress that point. And then that's it. It's picking a format which you'll enjoy. And I say enjoyment's more important than following a trend. This is meant to be a greater symbol, by the way. Most people probably don't recognize that. It's like old English, but you know, it's like I used to think the crocodile eats the bigger thing. That's how much of a child I am. But yeah, if follow the thing that you enjoy the most rather than just picking what's fashionable. I mean, right now, carousels are performing really, really well because they're just easy to consume. So you can lean on those, but if they're really arduous for you to produce, if they're really time consuming, you hate doing that, and you much prefer talking, just do that, stick to that. So just be aware that they have different levels of impact and what you can deliver. So picking formats, and you obviously with those three, you can do those 3 angles, you can do either of those formats, and it really is picking stuff and experimenting. But that's when we can go on to when to post. We can go cover that in a little bit more detail. So when to post, just want to cover the psychology of the week here, because you'll find that different days have different levels of motivation. Worst day of the week, which we'll start off with, is Saturday. Terrible day for conversion. Everyone wants to chill out. Friday comes, they want to put their feet up Friday night. They want to relax. Saturday comes, it's like their day where they can just chill out. They do not want to feel guilty at all about not making a change. Leave me alone, I'm chilling out. And then Sunday hits, and then they're probably maybe a little bit hungover or a little bit apprehensive waiting for Monday. They're in a space Sunday evening where they're probably on socials, cross-comparing themselves with other people, and that's a place where you can put a result in there, show the story, show other people, show someone overtaking them, and then they start to really question, like, you know, do I want that? I need this. Why are they doing it? How come they've got it? And you can catch people in that headspace. Monday's a good day because, again, got one down to the belt, it's not too bad. A little bit more willing to kind of commit and take action and do stuff. Tuesday is not as good as Monday, Wednesday's not as good as Tuesday, Thursday's not as good as Wednesday, and then we're back to Friday. So good intent, high intent, not as good, lower, lowest, low, or lowest, lower. No, lowest. You get the point. I'm really being pedantic there, but when to post depends depending on what to post and when to post, depending on psychology. Now, looking at our different angles of content, if we pick at let's just starting off with Sunday being like obviously the best day, results post. Showing off results where people cross compare. Monday, you show them the framework, you show them like the solution of like how you get results. Tuesday, you can cover a problem, show the results, cover the framework again of how you get the results, show a problem. This stands for casual. Literally Saturday, just post anything really. That's if you want to be relatable, if you just want to use social for social media, that's when you post. You post that on a Saturday and it's literally just a casual pic of you, or just your own bodybuilding update, or your own journey, or what life looks like recently, or my week, all that sort of stuff, you know, a bit more casual. And then if your account is smaller, what does that mean, John? Well, my account's tiny. So I've got like 500-ish followers. I'm probably optimizing for traffic, which basically means I'm trying to get more views, because at my size, I'm probably limited in people coming into my audience. Anyone under sort of like 2,000, 3,000 is probably in the same boat as I am. So when I look at Q, which is basically the quote, so look, what I mean by that, like a little short video reel, anywhere, you know, it could be between 5 and 20 seconds, and then you could have like a quote. I might as well give this to you now, but a good formula for that quote is, it's like common behavior you see your target market doing, and then why it will never yield, or why it never leads to, and then you put in the key thing they want. So it's just like me looking at mums running and then realizing that it's never going to burn the fat they think it will. Stuff like that. Common behavioral practice you see in the target market, why it won't give them what they want. Pretty much that. And then you can just obviously have fun with that, experiment. But with that being shorter, it's easier to watch all of it. Watch time's the main factor which determines the reach. You probably know that because it's pretty common knowledge. But if we're optimizing for things to be higher reach, you're going to get more eyes onto the page, and it's going to help capture more attention and bring more eyes into the business. And then if we look at talking reels here, we can look at carousels, we can look at pictures, before and after pictures. We have slightly elements of higher intent where we can give a little bit more impact, deliver a little bit more intent behind that. And then we're trying to connect and convert some of those new eyeballs that come through. So this is basically alternating the formats. So you can lower the bar and make it easier for new people to watch, but people who are already watching, you can derive more intent and you can warm them up. And then, you know, we won't cover stories in this, but ultimately the rough conveyor belt is you get a stranger to see you on the reels. When they see you on the reels, they come and check you out, they follow you, they start to consume other bits of content, and then they look at your stories. And when they're on your stories, it's so much easier to turn a story into a conversation with polls, quizzes, Q&As, rating scales, all that sort of stuff. And then that's when you're going to get viewers into conversations onto calls onto clients. That is the rough outline system. But you'll appreciate if you don't have anyone new coming in, you need to focus on shorter stuff to bring people in. Conversely, if you have got, let's just say like 3,000 plus followers and you're not really an issue with that, you've got good average views, you can incorporate different formats which is easier to get better intent, more communication, create bigger impacts. Talking reel, a carousel, picture of you, picture of the client, picture of you again, or picture of the client, sorry, and then you can still incorporate a little bit of reach there. So this is just looking at the ratio of what you need really and prioritizing. Do I want to be seen versus do I want to drive intent? Not too complicated. Again, if you need help with your own ratio and your own strategy, message me, I'll do what I can to help you. This is a big focal point for what I do with a lot of my clients. In Luke's example, it was absolutely critical. It made the difference with his business and his strategy, and now he's on a completely different trajectory. And right now with one of my clients, Angus, we're experimenting with the different ratios, and we're getting a really good balance, averaging about sort of 2 to 3 inquiries every single week. And that's a nice sweet spot for us. So yeah, formats are quite important, and it has to match what you enjoy and a bit of creativity here. So that's starting to put everything into practice. Now, once you've got that system and you're up and rolling, how do you refine it? Well, the first thing you want to do is look at what is actually producing inquiries. Do you have that data? Simple way to analyze this is, well, 2 things. On your inquiry form, at the end of the form, why do you want to work with me specifically? What made you sign up, or what made you inquire? Something like that. You'll find that that will probably give you some information of where it's come from. If it hasn't, and they signed up, maybe after a couple of weeks, ask them what made them sign up or how they came to find you. And that way you can track which of these formats or which of the bits of content has resonated with them. And it's a good way to kind of mark what's working and do more of that. And then the second thing to look at, again, inquiries is the biggest, most important metric for us, but then we can look at watch time as well. So if you've got reels, particularly like the shorter form reels, if you get one with higher views, start to check out the average watch time. Things with a higher watch time, pay attention to what you do at the beginning. That will inform you, it'll tell you that that intro, that hook is pretty good because it's getting a longer watch time. So you're just looking at what you're doing and what the best of your content looks like, and then leaning towards that and refining as you go. So that's just a little bit of analyzing on the back end. And then to actually systemize this and create it in a little bit more volume, talking head content, podcast style snippets are really easy way to produce talking head content. And the best way to do this is just find a friend, get a partner to ask you questions, and then you just set the camera like there. I'd look at the person and I'd just talk to a human being like that. They would laugh and I'd say something, I could see them snigger and I could start to react and like resonate, and then that way you're going to get a lot more of a human interaction. Whereas if you're just facing a camera, it can be really hard, like to start off with. So you're going to find a little bit more of a natural flow when you're going backwards and forwards in conversation. If you really want to, you can hire a studio, and then you can get good quality audio and camera work done, different angles. It's not needed, but that's an easy way where you can produce probably 60, maybe not 60, but 40 to 60 reels out of like 1 to 2 hours. And that was the irony with Luke. You know, he added 8K extra into his bank balance, and he grew his audience significantly from 2 content sessions. He went to film 14 reels, and I think it took him like 90 minutes per 14. He did that twice, and that would produce this. So for like 2 sessions of work, absolutely smashed it, hit the nail on the head, all because of the pain, hitting the problem with the pain point. But yeah, doing it in a podcast style studio, it really worked for him. And then we can look at check-ins. Check-ins, really easy way to document what you're doing here. I use this with my clients. I just say, when are your check-ins done? Can you give yourself half an hour, pick 7 talking points, and then just face the camera and talk about what's going on? And then later, when you're in editing it, when you're in edits or CapCut, you can add the overlay of the client. You can just say, so this happened. If they've got a result, great. Why? If they haven't got a result, if they're not doing anything, why? Talk about it, explain it, use it for material, and that's perfect content for Wednesday. Or if you want to be really cool, if that's literally a phrase I've just used because that ages me like mad, but you can put it on your stories, and if you have 7, that's 1 a day. So when anyone ever checks you out, you're always talking about clients making progress or what's happening on the inside of your service. And then you can do that by just systemizing it after your check-ins. 1 batch of content, that's your whole week's worth of stories, or something you can put on some of these days. So that you can do with check-ins, and then lastly, just modeling what works. So modeling is just looking at what is working on your current content. So the typical content where it's shorter, the quote style content, reaction content, anything where you're literally looking for a little bit more watch time on there, that's when you analyze, okay, what have I got going? What is the highest watch time? What are other people doing? What are other coaches doing? What do you see outside the industry? You don't copy, but you take inspiration from what other people are doing. It's impossible to be original because nothing is original anymore. So don't be afraid to take inspiration there and look at what's working. That can take you far. And then obviously, lastly, we're going to cover boosting posts as well, because I quickly wanted to mention this because boosted posts is a kind of, if you have a hack or if there is a shortcut to this, it's using a bit of paid budget to get more exposure, because you can pay for reach now. Obviously, you could always do that, but you've got to understand what are the necessary criteria for a boosted post. Because if you boost a post that's not relevant, for example, okay, look at it this way: you can have a post where you have a dog on it, and that has the highest reach and the highest engagement. If you boost that, are you going to get your target market, fill up your following? Are you fuck? No, you're not. Are you bollocks? So you need to be aware of, is he talking about a specific problem that I know my target market encounter? So I know I attract people with those problems, or I attract interested people. Does it have a good average watch time? And then is there a clear call to action on it? Not as important, but they're really good criteria. If it's yes on all of those, that's when you can boost it. And then you want to be under 50p a follower. And you can't really, there's no way to track that on the metrics. What you have to do is just note down every day how many, oh, so-and-so followed you from your ad, or so-and-so followed you from this reel. Just manually record it and then look at how much you're spending and calculate it that way. Instagram or Ads Manager, they don't actually give you a calculation on who follows you and the cost per follow. They give you cost per profile visit, but they don't give you cost per follow. You have to work that yourself. Oh, and by the way, when you are paying for stuff, do not do it with an Instagram because Apple will take 30% immediately. Any in-app purchase, Apple charge commission now. So just avoid it. Do it through desktop, through Ads Manager or Meta Business Suite if you don't have Ads Manager. But that way, all the money you spend goes to the ad rather than Apple's pockets. So just why pay more for getting results, basically, when you could just do it on desktop. But if you're paying for that, yeah, if you can get under 50p, 20p a follow, really, really good. Under 50p, not too bad. And that's where you want to end up at. And then, as I said, not a bad way to, obviously, exactly what it says, boosting, doing a little bit more of what works. So that's kind of it, guys. I hope that helps. Like I said, I didn't see much detail on other YouTube videos when I came to look at content. I just saw very vague, you've got to attract more clients, make sure you attract the right clients, post informative value topics around what your so-and-so go through. It's just like, what does that actually mean? So I wanted to give you stuff that you can action and take away. So you know exactly what you can talk about, how to then create that and balance, understand the difference between intent and views, being aware that it's not all about views, and just leveraging the psychology of the week for a little bit more of an easier win. And then once you've got that, produce it in a bit more of a systemized approach where you can enjoy it and it doesn't feel as much of a burden, because it shouldn't. Growing your business should be fun. Every one of us should enjoy getting out there and helping more people. And if it doesn't feel like that, we've got to look at why, and we've got to move towards a way where you can do this consistently and have just a great time doing it, which you can. Hope that helps.